welcome to the Why I Like Mike podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Mason Gordon. I'm joined by Rushville's Mayor, Mike Pavey. How you doing, Mike?
Good. How you doing, Mason?
Doing wonderful. For those of you who maybe not have listened to this podcast before, each week I sit down with Mayor Mike Pavey and talk about the issues that are facing the city of Rushville, what Mayor Pavey and his administration are doing to solve those issues, and why you should support him in the May Republican primary. So far, we've talked about the state of the city. We've talked about why you're running for mayor again. But I'm sure lots of people have noticed the I Like Mike team that you have assembled to run alongside you as city council members. So I think it's very important that we take some time to introduce those folks and maybe explain why you guys are running as a team and how you can impact the future of the city of Rushville. So first off, start by introducing the city council team that's running alongside you.
Well, first in the first district is Elton Marzon. Elton is an employee of Citizens Bank, a wonderful guy, a guy that we've used on our redevelopment board before. Super knowledgeable, super accessible, and so I think will be a big asset, especially when it comes to those financial decisions you make. The second person is Mike Dobbins-Speck. Mike will be representing the second district. Mike is, anybody that knows Mike is kind of we equate him a lot to Brian Sheehan. Probably a little bit better tech savvy as far as Brian, because I've told people that they kind of behave the same way, but Michael incorporates a little bit more technology and new stuff, but he's kind of I think he's just the blue collar guy, relates well to everybody in Rushville, and I think would be a person that people would feel very comfortable coming up to, talking to, and sharing their concerns or feelings. And then in District 3 is Aaron Gurley. Many people know Aaron. Aaron has he was a city employee. He was the director of the Parks Department. Good guy, very relatable. I think, again, that was something that I think we were making sure that we were looking for. Aaron is a guy who kind of shares his life on social media, very family oriented. So again, like I say, a perfect guy for the team we're assembling. And then the veterans, one more veteran than other, but the at-large are Brad Berkemeyer, who Brad's been on the council for the last 8 years, and then Bob Bridges, who's been on the council for really a little bit over 8 years, because he served out part of Darren McGowan's term, and then he also was the mayor. And so those guys I think they're, veteran leadership and approachability and just general knowledge of the system makes them extremely valuable team members.
So why is it that you are running as a team alongside those guys?
Well, I think that one of the things I've realized is you can't get things done on an island. You can't be the only person out there with the thought or the vision. I would say that we feel like we've been successful in what we've done over the last 8 years because, there has been a sense of teamwork and cooperation between all the people who are serving in office right now. There's you depending on the topic, you build certain coalitions and move things forward. But ultimately, I think what I've always tried to do is get a lot of people who have different personalities, different ways of thinking, put them on a team, and as long as they can have the same goals and visions, I think they're going to end up at the same place. And I think that's been very successful for our administration and thus the community.
Now, you mentioned there was 2 veterans on this city council team, but there's 3 new faces, and I think all young faces and I think very familiar to the community, but new to maybe the public service life. So what do you think those new perspectives can bring to the city council team and bring to the city of Rushville that will allow us to continue to lead the way in rural Indiana and take the city to the next level?
Well, I think new thought is always refreshing. I think that's a good thing. Young people are going to have new thoughts. I think one of the things I thought about actually today was 8 years ago, I had 2 models who modeled my my gear, and one was Sarah Niedenthal, and one was Mike Dobbins-Beck. And those are the people we targeted. We said that those are the people we need to appeal to, and we need to keep them in the community. Well, ironically, 8 years later, I'm asking Mike Dobbins-Beck and Sarah, and now it's Sarah Sweet, to model my shirts. And now I'm asking them and their families. So, Mike Dobbins-Beck and Ashley they're married and have 2 kids, and Sarah and her husband Robert have 2 kids. What I think the point is that we, by coincidence, asked 2 people to model, and we're hoping to maintain those young people in the community. And ironically, 8 years later, here we are with 2 married couples and each having 2 kids. So I just think that those people are the people we've hoped to attract. We've been able to attract them, and getting them involved in the decision making, I think, is critical.
I got a question. I think to challenge you to think a little bit about the team and how.
I've got a cold. I'm on medication.
Thinking's not your. I think oftentimes when people, I think, look at this team, maybe they can say, "Oh, well, you've got Mike and the boys running," and sometimes it's when we are challenged, I guess, that's when we perform at our best. How do you think this team you've put together can challenge you to become a better mayor and challenge you to move the city in a more progressive, better direction?
Well, I can tell you that the vision that we are incorporating into our community today is not my vision. It is not something that 8 to 10 years ago I sat down and said, we have to do this. What it is a direct result of feedback we got during those, whether it be the election or whether it be the comprehensive plan survey or whether it's surveys after that. What it is taking the data you get and formulating it into a plan. So I'm not really concerned about the makeup of that group as far as I think you want a diverse group. You want a group that is going to be, I think, respectful of each other, agree to disagree at times. But I will tell you that, and I would hope that the team that endorsed me from the last council would tell you that I am not a person that spoon feeds the council. I put an issue out there, we weigh the pros and the cons, and then we vote on it and we move forward. It is not you have to think like I'm thinking. It is more of put the topic out there, debate it, make a decision, and move on. And so having new thought or people who think differently. Brian Sheehan and I have talked over the years about the fact that Brian takes a very, he'll head very much in the left direction, and it will meander, and then he'll come to a decision. And I think the ironic but the convenient part of that is I will take the right direction, and I will head a different way, and it's usually very technical, it's usually very detailed, and usually Brian and I will end up the exact same place, but we go about things completely different, and I've always been comfortable with that with the council and the way they make their decisions.
Why are there some new faces on the city council right now?
You have some people who aren't going to run again. Gary Cameron has chosen, he has different interests and some things he wants to take care of, so he has chosen not to run. Craig Smith, Craig's getting ready to get married, and he will move out of his district. And I think Craig, if you know Craig, he's got different aspirations. Maybe some would call them higher aspirations, and we wish him the best of luck. The only person off the existing council who hasn't endorsed me is the person I'm going to run against. Probably the most puzzling piece of it is the closest thing to a rubber stamp as far as someone who has voted right along the lines of exactly what we've done has been my opponent. So that's a little confusing, but that's what we're faced with.
We've talked a lot about the I Like Mike team tonight, and we have a member of that team with us tonight. Mayor, would you like to introduce your guest to the crowd?
Yeah, this is something I hope to do with each of the members. But tonight's guest is the councilman that will represent District 2, which is it's kind of tough to describe, but it would be the southern portion of the city and the area that would be known across, basically south of the river. His name is Mike Dobbin-Speck. So Mike, if you would, kind of introduce yourself and tell them why you picked the I Like Mike team.
All right. I appreciate you guys having me on here this evening. Looking forward to the experience with running with the rest of the guys. The reason that I decided to run with the I Like Mike team, well, not only are we friends, and we've been friends for a good while, but I've got a young family. I've got a 3-month-old and a 6.5-year-old, and she'll tell you she's 6.5. And you know, I'm not looking for what's going to happen the next 4 years. I want those changes to go for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You've already made, you and your team, and team is the key word, but you yourself as the leader of that team, you've made decisions in the past 8 years that are not only just affecting, you know, these last 8 years, but they're affecting those 20 to 50 years down the road already. We've got, you know, new apartments coming down the road, market rate housing. There's going to be so many different opportunities for younger generations to come back to town. Friends of mine that I graduated with, friends that my brother and sister graduated with. There's opportunities here, and that's thanks to you. And I'm all in. I'm all in.